You've seen the ads, right? That dream of a laptop lifestyle, all paid for by selling stuff on Amazon. But what's the real story with Fulfillment by Amazon, or FBA? Is it actually a golden ticket to getting rich? Or is it more like a modern day gold rush where most people just end up with, well, a pan full of dirt? Today, we're going to break it all down. So, first, let's just wrap our heads around how massive this whole thing is. I mean, look at these numbers. Amazon's own revenue, a jaw-dropping $232 billion. But get this, third-party sellers, people just like you and me, they're pulling in almost $54 billion on the platform. We're not talking about some tiny corner of the internet here. This is a gigantic economic engine. And that engine, well, it's creating some serious success stories. We're talking about over 40,000 sellers pulling in more than $1 million in revenue every single year. When you hear a number like that, the opportunity feels, undeniable. But, and this is a big but, there's a catch. Revenue is not the same as profit. And trust me, hitting that $1 million mark is a whole different ballgame. And that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? Is FBA a legitimate, sustainable business you can actually build? Or is it just a pipe dream? The kind sold by online gurus who probably make more money selling courses than they ever did selling products. Well, that's exactly what we're here to figure out. To get to the bottom of this, we're going to dig into this really fascinating conversation between two people from totally different worlds. In one corner, you've got Mark. He's a seasoned, traditional business owner who built his millions the old school way, with actual warehouses and inventory. And in the other corner, you have Jack, a 19-year-old entrepreneur who's already hitting nearly £1 million a year in revenue, all through FBA. Okay, so Mark, our skeptic, he's not easily impressed, not at all. And to convince him that FBA is a real business, he's laid out these 6 big challenges. He calls them his bowling pins. The idea is, if FBA is legit, it has to be able to knock every single one of them down. And here they are, his big concerns. First, the startup costs are just too high. Second, the market's totally saturated. Third, finding a product that actually sells is next to impossible. Then there's Amazon's massive cut of your profits, the huge risk of getting stuck with a bad product, and the big one, you have basically zero control. It's Amazon's world. You're just selling in it. So, how does a 19-year-old who's actually in the FBA trenches every day respond to all that? Let's see how Jack tries to knock down each one of those pins. All right, first up, the money. Mark's first bowling pin is this idea that you need a giant pile of cash just to get started. To buy products, to test things out. Is this a game only for people who are already rich? Jack's answer is surprisingly low. He says you can get started with about £1,500. But here's the thing. He says the number isn't even the most important part. It's your mindset. You can't look at it as a cost you're going to make back next week. You have to see it as a long-term investment, an investment in yourself. Okay, so next up are 2 pins that are basically 2 sides of the same coin. The market being totally saturated, and how hard it is to find a winning product. I mean, with millions of sellers out there, isn't finding something profitable just like finding a needle in a haystack? For Jack, it has nothing to do with luck. It's about pure determination. He says, look, finding a product might take him 20 minutes, or it might take him 4 months. The key, he says, is his mentality. It's about sitting down, getting in the zone, and not getting up until he finds one. It's a game of persistence, plain and simple, not a game of chance. Okay, but what happens when all that persistence leads you down the completely wrong path? This is Mark's 5th pin, and it's basically every entrepreneur's worst nightmare. You invest thousands into a product, and it just sits there, and an Amazon warehouse, collecting dust and racking up storage fees. Ugh. And Jack is super honest about this. He's like, yeah, I've had failures. But instead of just taking a huge loss, he did something really smart. He used Amazon ads to just liquidate all the bad stock. And guess what? He broke even. He got his initial investment back. So the way he sees it, he didn't lose money. He basically paid for a crucial business lesson for free. Now, this is where the whole conversation takes a really interesting pivot, because Jack reveals that selling all these random products, well, that's not his endgame. Not even close. He sees it as a cash cow. It's the engine that's funding the real business he's trying to build. And that real business? It's called private label. This is the big strategy. It's where you stop just reselling other people's stuff and you start creating your own brand, your own products, your own packaging, your own story, all built on the back of Amazon's gigantic platform. And this pivot is absolutely crucial. It's the whole game. It means you're finding a manufacturer to make a product for you, you're designing your own logo, you're building a customer base that actually trusts your brand, not just some random product. And when you create something unique like that, something with a higher perceived value, you get better profit margins. That helps make Amazon's fees a lot easier to swallow. It completely transforms FBA from just a side hustle into a real, sellable business, an actual asset with value that goes way beyond just the profit from its last sale. So, after Jack lays out this whole strategy of using FBA to build a brand, what does our skeptic, Mark, have to say? Which of those 6 bowling pins actually got knocked down, and are there any still standing? Well, the result is pretty clear. Mark was persuaded on almost everything. Startup costs? Persuaded. Market saturation? Persuaded. Finding a winner? Amazon's cut. The risk of a bad product? Persuaded, persuaded, persuaded. Jack's real-world experience, especially with that private label strategy, knocks down 5 out of the 6 pins. But that last pin, the big one, it's still standing. For Mark, the fundamental risk is this. You're building your entire business, your brand, your customers, your whole livelihood, on a platform that you don't own and you absolutely do not control. That was the one concern that just never got solved. Because at the end of the day, Amazon makes the rules, and they can change them whenever they want. So where does that leave us? What's the big takeaway here? After weighing this huge opportunity against some very real risks, what should you take away from all this? Ultimately, it really looks like there are 2 completely different ways to look at Amazon FBA. Path number 1, you can treat it like a side hustle. Find other people's products, resell them for profit. And hey, that can definitely work, but it might not be a forever thing. Then there's path number 2. You use FBA as the launch pad to build your own private label brand, creating a real, sustainable, long-term business asset that you could actually sell one day. And that leaves us with one last big question. Because whether you're building a quick side hustle or a long-term brand, you're still building it on someone else's turf. So you really have to ask yourself, is the massive, incredible opportunity that Amazon offers worth the fundamental risk of playing in their sandbox? And that answer is up to you.